Hi there, I'm Blackbright, broadcasting out of the UK. Welcome to my channel. And yes, I just wanted to say you can like, you can put the thumbs down, you can subscribe, you can interact. You know, the same usual bump that we ask you to do. I wanted to talk about Africa. I haven't spoken about Africa for quite a while, and I do hate it when I speak about Africa and it's always seen as the oppressed country, or, there's always somebody doing them injustice, and it's always kind of negative stuff. So I wanted to kind of talk about how progressive. I was listening to a video that someone sent me yesterday, and the lady in the video was saying how difficult it is as an African to navigate through Africa. You just can't go. You would have thought that in Africa you could just go from one part of the continent to another, easy peasy. Like say we go from local, maybe from Neasden to Harlesden, or from London to Manchester, Manchester to Birmingham. You would think that because Africa is one continent, you'd be able to travel internally without any problems, but that's not the case. And as this lady was saying, she said she felt deprived, that she couldn't go from one part of Africa to the other without a long visa process. So I kind of started wondering, why would they put up borders in Africa? And of course, it's probably to divide and rule, it's probably to control, and they'll come up with all of these reasons why Africa has to be segregated from each other as opposed to being an integrated African nation. And they'll say, oh, it's because of crime, and they'll say it's because people are trying to smuggle, they'll say it's because of disease, and they'll find lots of reasons why we cannot have one Africa, why Africa cannot just be one people. And yes, we could argue that we have different cultures and different beliefs and different religions from one part of Africa to the other. But what's the difference here? I mean, for people who live in Luton, you'll have Berry Park, which is predominantly Asian. You'll have in London, you may have Golders Green or Stoke Newington, which is predominantly Jewish. They have their cultures. I mean, but we don't need to have a passport to leave from Berry Park to Golders Green. So that's not really a feasible excuse. Anyway, the African Union are planning to do something about it, but it's going to take 47 years to create a borderless Africa. Why does it take so long? Why isn't it about just lifting off all the restrictions and just say people can travel where they want to travel? The thing is that, especially with Nigeria is really disadvantaged because it's at the bottom of the passport ranking system, which means that if you come from Nigeria, you have to go through a very extensive visa application process. A lot of Nigerians are rejected. Their applications are rejected. There doesn't have to be a reason, but it's because of where they're ranked on the passport. I think it's 97 as of January 2020. Last year they were 80, so you can imagine it's going further and further down. And I noticed when I was looking at the passport index that most African countries are low on the passport index, and that is probably, as I say, deliberate, to inhibit or restrict their movement, to keep them in one place, so you know what they're doing, you know where they're going. So if they have a dubious passport status, who's going to want to accept them? And if they do accept them, they're going to go through the utmost scrutiny. So that is just to kind of give you a little background. And now I'm going to go to my notes like I usually do. So we're talking about liberating the visa and liberating Africans. Because what the AU is saying, the AU is the African Union, integrated Africa. Well, they want to integrate Africa with a liberated visa. So Africans should have unrestricted right to travel within the African continent. Agenda 2063, this is the 47 years I'm talking about. A 50-year vision, because this came out in 2017. A 50-year vision for an integrated Africa. The intention is to see Africa as one people united under the ideals of Pan-Africanism. And you know, sometimes when you think about this world lockdown, you wonder if it's because people are getting organized, countries are getting organized. Countries are beginning to think, well, do I really need this country to survive, to sustain ourselves? Do we really need this? So countries are beginning to question whether or not they're sustainable, and if they're not, why not, and how they can become sustainable. And that doesn't really benefit Western countries, does it? Because Western countries want places like Africa and Asia to depend on them and to be, you know, but it's basically to be reliant on them and see them as their knights in shining armor, see them as their rescuers. So if these countries are becoming dependent or independent, I should say, that's not going to be good for their economy, for their income. It's not going to be good. So, at the moment, they have physical and invisible borders, and that has hindered African unity. And the thing is, when you think about all of these borders and being restricted within a country that is your own, you can kind of understand why they want to escape from all that and go to another country where they're free to roam wherever they want. So it kind of makes sense, especially when you think about Nigerians when they have. I mean, it hasn't always been the case. I mean, it's a few bad apples that have caused Nigerian passport to go down because of the smuggling, the scams, and they have this kind of reputation. So, but you can understand why they want to escape from Nigeria, although albeit Nigeria is a beautiful country, because they're restricted on where they need to go. They can't just jump from Nigeria to Cape Verde. It takes, I think, about 22 hours. So, and they have to go through Casablanca, I think, and, you know, they go all over the bloody place. So you can understand. So if they come over to England or America or even Europe, they can go from Spain to Portugal. They can go from Spain to England. They can go from maybe Spain to America. They don't have that autonomy in Africa where they can go from, I don't know, there's a few of them. Let me update you because I'm talking about a little bit in the past, because I think there's 14 countries so far which are visa free. So it's not all of Africa. They're working to have all of Africa to be visa free. So I think there was 14 at the last count who enable that, where Africans from regardless of which part of Africa, you can enter the country visa free. But sometimes they need a visa, a departure visa. So there's still that element of control. So it's not like they can just get up and go. If they don't need a visa on arrival or they don't need a visa at all, they might need a departure visa. So, the Agenda 2063 flagship project, the African passport and free movement of people, let me say that again. The Agenda 2063 flagship project, the African passport and free movement of people aims to remove restrictions on Africans' ability to travel, work and live within their own continent. So, it just seems unfathomable. Well, I'm getting tongue twisted today. Unfathomable to see that, you know, people from abroad, like from America, they can go into Africa visa free, any part of Africa visa free, and yet indigenous Africans don't have that privilege. Isn't that weird? So, Nigerian passport ranks 95th on the Henley Passport Index, alongside Kosovo, Libya, Pakistan, and there's quite a number of them actually. This means it's expensive for Nigerians to travel, likely to get their visa applications rejected for no reason, and there's intensive visa application paperwork. There's an Party Parliamentary Group report from British lawmakers in August 2019 showed Africans are being unfairly denied UK visas. And that is because of their passport status. The passport status justifies countries from rejecting their applications. They're not going to say that. And they go through this great extensive visa application process, and they may well still be denied. Remember they had those Africans that were supposed to attend that conference, and the system rejected them regardless that they were well-to-do, they were professors and they were doctors and they were researchers. But the system rejected them, and it probably rejects them based on their passport index as opposed to their colour, or as opposed to the fact that they are Nigerian or wherever they were coming from. Because if the majority of African countries are very low on the index, on the passport index, that's an easy way for their artificial intelligence system to reject certain applications, visa applications. So all of those on the lower end of the passport index are very likely to get their visa applications denied. That is just a thought. That is not a fact. That's just my opinion. Okay, the real life implications of difficult visa processes for Africans range from being unable to visit family members abroad to scuttling higher education plans. Up to 75% of African students who applied for study permits in Canada between January and May 2019 were rejected. So, African plans to transform her laws that restrict their movements. Nigeria faces the toughest travel restrictions. And even Africa's richest Nigerian, Aliko Dangote, I think he's worth 8.5 billion US dollars. He needs 36 visas to travel within Africa. 36 visas on his Nigerian passport. Meanwhile, European nationals can waltz in visa-free or get a visa on arrival. You see how black people restrict themselves? They disadvantage themselves. Yeah, a lot of times we can blame white people for our downfall or for whatever's happening. But when you see situations like this, black people are actually disadvantaging. What's wrong with me today? Disadvantaging themselves. They're disadvantaging themselves, aren't they? Because whose law is it? Who decides about the visa processes? Is it a white person who says you've got to set up this visa or border control between countries? Or is it African government heads that make that decision? And if they make that decision, why do they make that decision? Have they been brainwashed to divide? Have they been brainwashed to think that if you open up your borders to all Africans, you're not going to have any jobs, like the same way they do with immigration in the UK. Take up your housing, take up your jobs. Have they been brainwashed to believe that rather than invite talent and positive resources and that kind and skills, they're actually going to be overrun, overpopulated? They're indigenous, or those people from that country, say Nigeria or Ghana or whatever it is, are going to be disadvantaged if everybody just comes in willy-nilly. I don't know. Because it seems absolutely ridiculous that you need 36 visas. There's 54 countries in Africa. So why is it that Africans are penalised when travelling within the continent while outsiders are not? Divide and rule? Can you imagine if it was one Africa? Africa being the biggest continent in the world. Can you imagine if it was borderless? Can you imagine? And that's what it is. They cannot, whoever they are, afford for Africa to be one continent with one people. It's too powerful, isn't it? And people who have power have influence. People who have power are not accountable a lot of the time, or do not feel that they are accountable. People who have power do as they wish, and a lot of times when power is put in the wrong hands, people can hurt others, people disadvantage others. So, whoever set that system up to create borders and visas for every single African continent, which are slowly coming down now, actually, they've done that for a reason. So, there are supposed to be, the way the world is created, we have natural borders. We have borders through the sea, we have borders through mountains, we have borders through valleys. Those are nature's borders. Then we also have man-made borders. And it's the man-made borders who decided that we needed them. It's all about control, isn't it? Apparently, it is because a few bad eggs who smuggled, scammed, defrauded, compounded with alleged threat of disease, crime, and the likelihood to become illegal immigrants and local conflict, which is why they disallowed autonomy in the past. That is about to change despite security issues, the possibility of increased crime, job losses, different cultures, and the challenge of building trust. Burkina Faso charges $155 for a visa on arrival. Some countries require a visa on departure. Intra-African travel has been frowned on in the past. Citizens of 15 African countries out of 55 can travel to South Africa without a visa. So they've apple picked which countries can travel to South Africa without a visa. How can Africa be visa-free to the world, but not for Africans who want to travel within Africa and around the world? Senior diplomats and rich Africans can have visas that facilitate intra-African travel. African Union want a borderless continent for its 1.2 billion people. Could that be why certain countries are getting itchy feet? In November 2017, after 15 years of negotiations, the Central African Economic and Monetary Community, comprising Central African Republic, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Republic of Congo, ratified the visa-free movement of its citizens. Rwanda removed travel restrictions and there was no increase in crime rates, which African government claim is the reason for not making Africa borderless. Africans can get a 90-day visa on arrival. Rwanda says making their country visa-free has attracted talent and investment. So that's a positive. Ghana is offering free access to a third of African Union 55 member states. And you'll also remember that both Ghana and Nigeria, you can fly direct from Jamaica. They've created a visa-free from Jamaica to Ghana, from Jamaica to Nigeria, which is excellent. Senegal is offering visa-free access to 42 African countries. That's brilliant. That's 42 out of the 55. And I wonder which countries they're not offering free visa access to. I wonder if Nigeria is one, because if it is, Nigeria is being disadvantaged within the continent and outside the continent, which is not fair. I mean, if they are worried, they can do extensive visa applications, but they shouldn't not be able, just because you're Nigerian, to travel to certain countries, especially within the continent. Namibia is attempting a reciprocal arrangement with a visa for you and a visa for me. So if I allow you visa-free access, I want visa-free access into your country. That's Namibia. The Openness Report in 2017 stated a 2016 analysis of Africans' visa policy regimes demonstrated that on average, Africans needed visas on departure to travel to 54% of other African countries. East and West Africa seems to be leading in visa liberalisation. Currently, 14 countries in Africa offer the liberal on arrival or no visa access to citizens of all African countries. Somalia cannot travel within Africa without a visa. That's another country that cannot just move about freely within Africa, within the continent. With all these restrictions, it is no wonder why some Africans want to leave Africa. But that's what I just put down. 75% of African students who applied for study permits within Canada between January and May 2019 were rejected. And this is all compounded by the fact that, Africans and people outside, especially those from just not just Africans, but those from the third world who believe that Western countries are superior and are better and therefore want to get away. And some of them even harm themselves in order to stay in the country rather than go back to their country. That's not because their country is bad or their country is impoverished or their country is diseased. It's because a lot of times they feel as though there's more opportunities outside. But if they believed in themselves, if there was less self-hatred, they would know that the same opportunities, if not better opportunities, are within their country. How much more safer can you feel if you're a black person in a black country? Yes, I know you have discrimination. I mean, you have Africans who discriminate against Africans. You have Caribbeans who discriminate against Caribbeans. You have Asians who discriminate against Asians. You have white people who discriminate against themselves. You're going to find discrimination everywhere. But I do not imagine that the discrimination is going to be the same. They have this thing called colorism, and that means the lighter people discriminate against the darker people. I don't think it's so much now, but maybe about 15, 20 years ago, that was the case. Lighter skinned people were in the banks. And do you know what I think has broken that barrier? I think music, talent, the arts have broken that barrier of colorism. And I think that it has allowed people, regardless of race and colour, to break that barrier. Maybe that's why they're that's why they're stopping the bloody theatres. Can you imagine? The theatres are being closed down. They don't want talent. They don't want to see talent. Maybe they don't want to see a colourful palette of talent. Who knows? Anyway, Africans like Caribbeans seem to be more tolerant of Westerners than they are of their own people, but you'll find that the same happens with any race. You understand your race, so you're likely to be less tolerant. It's like, because my parents are Jamaican, I know more or less the Jamaican culture. So I'm more likely to be less tolerant if I feel they're messing me about, because you pick up the innuendos, and you know what the culture is like, you know the tones, you know the intonation. So you can pick up when someone's taking the pee. I wouldn't be able to do that with somebody from, say, Barbados, or somebody from Montserrat, or somebody from St. Vincent, or somebody from Africa. Because I wouldn't get that, I wouldn't have that inner knowledge of that culture. And also with white people, well, I think because I'm born here, I have an understanding of white people as well. I believe I do. But I can't of every white person, of course not. Like I can't of all black Brits. But with black Brits, we have a common thread that seems to permeate no matter where you are in the world. So, yes, I can understand why there's a lack of tolerance of people in your own country, your own colour. It's got nothing to do because you're putting that person down, but it's because you can't, well, sometimes you make a generalisation, and sometimes you stereotype, but sometimes you feel as though you know that person a bit better, whereas you're more likely to make allowances. Well, of course, you've got people who are intolerant of people outside their culture, but if you're an open-minded person, you're more likely to make allowances for somebody who is outside that culture, because you kind of think, oh, maybe they didn't mean it that way. Maybe that body language doesn't mean that. Like they say in the Asian language, they put their head down. They it's hard for them to make eye contact. Whereas in America, if you don't make eye contact, it's considered deceitful. So, I think that is where that's coming from. I don't think it's coming necessarily from a bad place. It's coming from a place of overconfidence, that you know the culture, you know your black people, and so therefore you have less tolerance of them. What else have I got here? I don't want this to be a long one, and it's getting a bit long. My last one, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Anyway, let me get through this quickly. Most African countries feature low on the passport index, who is responsible for determining who goes where on the passport index. And is that just another way to restrict movement? That was a question I had. A passport that is loaded with potential negative outcomes weakens it. It makes sense for the largest continent in the world to make it borderless so that Africans can travel unrestricted within it. Nigerians who want to travel are likely to need bank statement, business bank statements, proof of address, invitation letter from a GP that the traveller doesn't have Ebola, even if they've never visited the region. That's what this young lady was saying. She'd never visited the region, but she needed a letter from her doctor to say she didn't have Ebola. These are the kind of things that are put in place to restrict travel. Africans' travel is made difficult. Diversion en route means that it can take 22 hours to travel from another country within Africa. Nigeria to Cape Verde, like I was saying, is almost the same time it takes to get from the UK to Australia. The route it takes is Lagos to Casablanca and then to Bissau and then to Cape Verde. There's no direct flights. Africa needs a new infrastructure to accommodate direct flights and travel within African continents. Jamaicans can fly direct to Nigeria and Ghana for around £1,000. It's I think it's $1,300. Selective discrimination. Nigerians are penalised for a few bad apples. If Africa respects, nurtures and sustains her beautiful countries and cultures, it would create a stable country with fantastic growth opportunities. Indigenous will want to stay, not escape or try to kill themselves en route rather than be sent back. Africa needs to stand in its power and demand mutually beneficial arrangements. No longer does it need to be the underdog, the diseased planet. The solution to mistreatment, injustice, discrimination of black people is in the hands of ourselves. We need to seek ways to improve our economic power. The African Union is on the way of liberation from travel restrictions within Africa, so we won't need to rely on approval from other countries to enter them. Because can you imagine if we have a borderless Africa, and Africa is so rich in resources and minerals, so can you imagine if you have a borderless Africa and you have all these Africans, with their talent and investing in different parts of Africa and building it up and believing in themselves and loving who they are. Can you imagine how powerful that continent will be? And that's all I'm saying, peeps. Bye-bye for now.